In this lesson, we're going to review the concept of the properties of operations. So let's go ahead and zip through these properties. The first property is the commutative property. In this property, what you're going to be doing is changing the orders of the numbers. So I'm going to go ahead and write that down. Changing the order. I like to remember this by using this little tool here. The beginning of the changing word, changing starts with a C, and then the order is O. So changing order is the same as commutative. Here are two examples to help you out. 2 plus 3 is equal to 3 plus 2. Notice that 2 plus 3 is 5 and 3 plus 2 is 5. So the purpose of the property is to show you that even though you change the order of the numbers, you're still going to get the same solution. The commutative property also works under multiplication. So 2 times 3 is the same as 3 times 2. You're going to get the same result. Here's an example. It says, use the commutative property to complete this equation. And then we have 1.2 plus 3.5 plus 5. So if I were to do the commutative property, what I would do is just change the order of the numbers. So it looks like a good answer for this would be C, because I changed the 3.4 and 5. I changed the order of those numbers, but I'm still going to get the same answer. All right, the associative property. This is playing with the groupings of numbers. An example of the associative under addition would look like this. 2 plus 3 plus 4. That's a grouping of numbers. And that's going to equal 2 plus 3 plus 4. Notice the order of my numbers have not changed. 2 plus 3 plus 4 and then 2 plus 3 plus 4. What happened was the groupings of the numbers changed. So if I look on the left side, 3 plus 4 gives me 7, plus 2 is 9. And on the right side, 2 plus 3 is going to be 5 plus 4 is 9. So I changed the groupings of the numbers but still have the same result. This still works under multiplication and would look like this. 2 times 3 times 4. And then 2 times 3 times 4. Still getting the same result. An example of this would be below here. Use the associative property to complete the equation. 4 times 7 times W. Well, the best answer here is going to be A, because you can see the groupings went from my 7 times W, and it moved to my 4 times 7. The identity property. This is the one where you want to keep the number's identity. For example, if you have something like, let's just choose a nice easy number, 3. If we want to keep 3 and we have to add a number to it, I'm going to add 0 to it to keep my 3. That is the identity property of addition. Likewise, with multiplication, if I have the number 3, but I want to keep the number 3, I'm going to multiply it by 1 to keep it at 3. An example of that would be using the identity property to complete the equation here. -2 times, parentheses, -6 plus 0. Well, the best answer there is going to be B. Okay, now let's talk about some more properties. The inverse property. Inverses are numbers that are opposite each other. So an example of, I've got 2 examples for you. So I'm just going to write opposite here because that's what you're looking for, opposite numbers. I have numbers like negative. Whoops, I'm sorry about that. Let me go ahead and erase that line. Numbers like -3, so -3 plus 3 is equal to 0. So adding opposites give you 0. And then I could do 2 times its opposite. Well, its opposite is going to be 1/2, because remember, 2 can be written 2 over 1. And that's going to equal 1. So those are inverse properties. All right, the distributive property, one of my favorite ones. This is the one where you're going to have a number outside that you're going to distribute in. Let me give you some examples. How about this? 2 times 3x plus 1. Actually, let me give you a different example. I don't really care for that one. 2 times, I'm just going to choose 3 plus 1. I'm going to multiply the 2 by the 3. So 2 times 3 is 6. And then I'm going to multiply the 2 by the 1. 2 times positive 1 is positive 2. So I'm going to say plus 2, which is going to simplify down to 8. So that's the distributive property. An example of the distributive property is below. Use the distributive property to complete the equation. So you can see that I'm going to multiply the 3 by the 5 and then the 3 by the negative 9, giving me B as my answer choice. And the zero product property. This is going to be anything multiplied by 0 is 0. So let me give you an example. So you can pick truly any number here. So let's just take 3, and you're going to multiply it by 0, and that's going to give you 0. Another great example would be something like 3 times 2 times 4 times 1/5 times 2 times 0. All of that is going to equal 0. And here's our example. Use the zero product property to complete the equation. 10 times 0 plus 5. So 10 times 0, that's going to give us 0. So really it's going to just be 0 plus 5. All right, those are all the properties that we are going to talk about this year. We're not going to worry about the ones below. But you know what? I'm going to go ahead and I'll just chat about these. I'm not going to write anything. The properties of equality. These are properties where when you're solving equations, whenever we add or subtract a number from both sides, that's called a property of equality. For example, if you're adding 2 to both sides of the equation, that means you have the additive property of equality. And same thing with inequality. If you're working with inequalities, and let's say you subtract a number from both sides, that's going to be the subtraction property of inequality. All right, go ahead and try these questions at the bottom to review properties.